Hi, I'm Tony, and today we're going to learn about Bargello quilts. So what is a Bargello? A Bargello style quilt is made with strips of fabric that when sewn together create the appearance of movement and design within the quilt. It looks complicated, but it's actually super easy. If you can sew a straight-ish line, you can learn how to make a Bargello quilt. So today we're going to take a jelly roll and we're going to turn it into a large lap quilt that's a Bargello. You can use multiple things, but go ahead and sew along with us. By the end of the video, you'll become an expert. You'll be able to make a Bargello design. You can create your own designs or pick up a pattern and follow the Bargello pattern along with it. It's all in the matter of the techniques and understanding what goes into it. So grab your jelly roll and let's get sewing. The jelly roll I'm going to be working with today is a standard regular size jelly roll, 40 strips wide. You can use a 20 strip jelly roll, but remember it's going to be half the size of the one that I'm working with today. So the first thing you want to do is open your jelly roll. And sometimes this plastic gets a little hard to open, so if we take a seam ripper, there we go. Now, you will need a really good seam ripper for Bargellos. This is my preferred seam ripper, the Seam Fix, with the eraser on top to get rid of all of those stubborn little tiny threads. All right, so let's open up my jelly roll. Ooh, there's nothing like opening a fresh jelly roll to do something with it. All right, now a lot of jelly rolls will have 20 different fabrics, 2 strips of each fabric. It's exactly what mine has. So I have 2 strips of each fabric inside my jelly roll. Now, in addition to being a regular jelly roll, my fabrics are also the variegated. So it actually has a lighter color that goes into the darker color. So it has the color change within it, which is going to make my Bargello look really cool and look like I cut up a whole bunch of little pieces of little colors, but I actually didn't. But any jelly roll will work as long as you have 20 different colors. And of course, the smaller jelly rolls have that. Step number 1, if you have 40 strips and 2 of each strip, we need to decide to lay it out. So I'm going to separate into 2 separate stacks. So whenever I combine my strips together, I want to make sure that I'm doing it in groups of 20. And that's just going to be a lot more manageable. You can do it in one entire huge strip of 40, but the 20 just makes it a lot more manageable. All right, so I'm separating it out. After I do this, I need to decide the order that I want my colors. If you have a jelly roll already prepared, great. The manufacturer of that fabric probably already told you what they want that, order to be, or what they suggest the order to be. But you don't have to take that order. You can put it in any order that you want for your jelly roll. So I'm going to finish doing this, and then I'm going to lay out my jelly roll and show you my preferred layout for these colors. You know what? I'm just going to go with what was in the order of the jelly roll because these batiks flow in together so well. I'm just going to do that. So what we need to decide now is so we've decided our order. So now we have to decide number 1 to 20. Now in this case, remember I have a variegated. So it goes from one color to the next color in my strip. So I want to make sure that when I'm laying these out, that my light part of the variegated all goes towards one side and the dark goes towards the other side. And I'm laying these out just like that. Now, what we're going to do for the next step is strip piece. So we're literally just going to sew this entire thing together. So strip to strip to strip to strip to strip. That's all I'm doing. And when I lay it out, it's just an easy way to remember the order so that whenever I sew it, I'm going to grab the bottom two, sew them together. Then there's two ways you can do this. You can grab the next one. So if I sew these two together, I can grab the next one, sew it, next one, sew it, next one, sew it, and have one large one all the way down. Whoops, this one. Oh, there's a few that I reversed. Look at that. See, it's important to pay attention to the colors. There we are. I was just moving right along and totally didn't pay attention like I told you to pay attention. All right, so two ways. You can have one big group and just continue to sew a single strip to the entire group, or you can group them. So you can sew them two at a time, and then when they're all sewn, sew them together 4 at a time. And then when they're all sewn, 8 at a time, until you get all 20 pieces sewn together in one large conglomeration. Now, if you've ever done a jelly roll race, this is basically what you're doing. You are basically just sewing together all of these strips, so it's going to look like one really cool, massive quilt. So I'm going to go ahead and sew these together and then come back, and then we're going to talk about ways to iron your seams and why. And with the power of video, it's sewn together. So I have all 20 of my strips sewn together using a 1/4 inch seam. I forgot to mention that before. 1/4 inch seam when you're sewing your strips together. So once you decide your order, sew them all together. Just do the first 20. Remember, we set the other 20 aside. After you watch the entire video and you start to design your Bargello quilt, then you can decide if you want to do anything with those 20 in the same order or if you want to do something a little different. So the next step is we're going to set up our layout for our design work. Now, ironing. I mentioned that I'd talk about ironing now. I ironed all of my seams up. So every single one of my seams is ironed up. You can iron them up, you can iron them down. Just make sure every single one of your seams is in the exact same direction. That is extremely important whenever you decide what you're doing with your seams. Do not iron them open. Do not go any which way. One direction, up or down. And that is important because we want to nest our seams whenever we're sewing them together. If you're not sure what nesting seams is, I do have a video I've linked down below. Take a look at it at this point so you can understand why this ironing is important for the different directions. So let's do the next step. So we're going to prepare this for our rotary cutting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my entire 20 strips and I'm going to fold it in half this way so that my strips are going up and down. Now you notice whenever I ironed my strips, they're all different sizes. This is fine. Don't worry about this. As you're ironing your strips together, you're going to have a little bit of variance. And then we're going to fold it in half again. There we are. All right, and then I'm going to take this and lay it out on my cutting mat. And let's do the next step. Now with this step, we want to make sure that we cut off the very end of it because we want to square this up. So, and I'm using my Stripology squared up ruler to do this. Now, here's the thing though. We have to have at least an inch of each fabric on the end. So you're not just squaring it up, you're making sure that you have this fabric. Because, remember when I said we're determining number 1 to 20? Well, this is what we're doing. We're making sure that we have our numbers, okay? So that number 1 was at the top to number 20. So now, let's square this up. And I want to make sure, so let's find the fabric that is the shortest. Okay, it is this one right here. So I'm going to square it up to that one right there. And let's line this up and cut. Now, if you do the second set of strips, of 20 strips, the same exact order, you do not need to have at least 1 inch for the second order. And this is why, because this is why we want to have that larger strip. I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to take my black Sharpie pen, and I'm going to label these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, oops, sorry about that, I bumped the camera, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. There we go. So I have all of my numbers for these fabrics laid out. Now, I'm not done with this one. So this is our numbers 1 to 20. Now we can use this for design, but first we have to get the rest of this prepared. So now what we want to do is we want to turn this into a tube, a complete tube. So we want to come back over here, and now I'm going to put right sides to right sides within my tube. Now, sometimes I like to make the tube first and then cut off the ends, but then I have to open this one up to write my numbers. Sometimes I do it this way, and by doing this way, we're just going to really straighten it up, just trim it just a touch whenever we come back again. All right, so I'm going to do this, and let's turn this into a tube, and I'm making sure that I'm ironing my seam in the same direction as all of the others. Okay, we have our tube. So I'm going to take my entire tube and I'm going to flip it inside out so I can now see right sides again. An entire tube. Fantastic. And then now, this is the tricky part of laying your tube in a way that is easy to sew. So what I like to do is make these areas nice and taut and line it up along a seam. So I'm going to line it up along this seam right here, shake it out, lay it down to make sure everything is all lined up, and then I'm going to fold this over one more time. And it's all laid out now. Now, as you see, it's not quite squared up anymore, so I do want to square it up. Now, if you decided to make your tube first instead before you cut this part off, that's perfectly fine. At this point is when you would cut that part off. So let me square this up. There we are. All right, and that is trash. Now, I'm going to cut the first one. At this point, if you are following along with me and you have your tube, stop. Do not cut this next part. Do not continue forward with any more cutting. And I will show you why at the next step when we do our design work. So my strips in this quilt, I have made the decision that I'm going to have 2-inch finished squares. So the entire quilt is just going to be 2-inch finished squares. These are 2.5-inch strips. So this is already a 2-inch finished square. So I'm going to cut my first one at a 2.5-inch to show you exactly what we're doing. So remember, I have my numbers, 1, 2, 3. So now I have a tube of all of my colors. I can start whatever color I want at the very top. So let's say if I do want to start with my number 1. Remember, I said the seam ripper is going to be a super, super important thing for this video. So we're going to find our number 1, and that's going to be my top right here. In fact, let me move this down just a touch. So I'm going to take this seam right here and open this seam. So I'm going to take my seam ripper and just quickly open this up. And I know I am not using my seam ripper with how my video, how to use a seam ripper, you may be surprised, shows, just because this is only a single seam and it's a little bit quicker. All right, now we're going to iron this down so that our seam is not bent, and then we're going to get rid of all of these threads. Now I have my first one with my number 1. So let's do some design work, and I will show you now what these numbers mean and how you can lay your Bargello quilt out. So there's two different kinds. We have the graph paper, and then we have the computer design using Excel. Now the first way to design is using graph paper with colored pencils, crayons, markers, whatever you have that can show the colorings. And we're going to use these colors here as our cheat sheet. So we can use some purples, some pinks, oranges, yellows, and so on. The trick though is the numbers. Anytime you see A1, you've got that. So let's say if I want to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm not going to go all the way to 20 just because I want to see the design. And then I'm going to move this one down, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this is going to be number 20 coming up. And then I'm going to do this again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this will be 20, 19. And then maybe I want to come back up again. Let's say if I want to do peaks and valleys. You can even then take your ones and then go down, maybe go across. And then you can see the movement of your blocks as you're doing it. The colored pencils are to give you an idea. So here's some purple. So 1, 2, 3, I'm going to say is the general purple. So there's my general purple. 1, 2, 3. The number one thing that you care about is what number is starting up here. And if you go beyond your 20, are you getting numbers from someplace else to fill in here? So then here's my 1, 2, 3. So you can start to see some of the movement. 4 is going to be a pink. So 4, 5, 6 are all kinds of pinks because I only have 12 colored pencils in this chart. So you can kind of see the way that it's moving and the way that it's flowing. And then that is how you can do it with graph paper. Let's say if you want to do something a little bit more technical. Let's say if you don't like that these colors don't show exactly what you want. You want a little bit more variety and you don't have a lot of pencils or colored pencils or crayons or things to do that. Or if you're a little bit more technical and you like the technical aspect of it. You can always use a spreadsheet. So spreadsheets are a great way of doing it. Now my quilt that I'm going to be making today, that I've done all the sewing for, and I'm going to be creating all the stuff, I did using a spreadsheet online. So you see all of my numbers are in here, and then I did the colors. So you see the number 1, 2, 3. Now it's not going to be an exact color. It's not going to have an exact representation, but it's going to have a general flow. So in this case, I'm just going to do a standard flow. And I had said before I want 2-inch finished squares. So this is great. This is also great. I can do it on here with 2-inch finished squares. But let's say if I want a true Bargello and I want it to seem like it's waving in the wind and I want everything to be thin and thick and thin and thick, and how am I going to cut all of my strips in order to show those waves? You can take your Excel and make these columns bigger or smaller to show different widths. There is a measurement tool in your spreadsheet that you can actually, instead of having a nice square, you can make it thin or you can make it thick. And then that is how thick you cut your strips. And that is why I didn't want you cutting your strips until you decided on your design of what you're actually doing. In my case, I'm cutting every single strip 2.5 inches. So the next step is now to lay it out. So I'm going to get all of my strips cut. I'm going to get all my strips unbound so that I have the number 1, 20, 19, 18, 17 right on top. But remember, I've only done 1/2 of my jelly roll. So right here, you see this number 20? So this right here, this line right here is a whole new jelly roll. I'm sorry, not whole jelly roll. This line right here is my other half of my jelly roll. So I've got half of my jelly roll here. It's actually this here. So this, I have 16 strips. So I can get 16 strips out of one jelly roll, and then this part is my other jelly roll. So what I'm gonna have to do is do my strips, and then do another strip, and then attach the other strip down for number 10. Oh, and look, I can take number 10, because 11 is gonna start right here, and bring up, and that's why I have my marker right here to let me know that, excuse me, this number 11, I can just take this one right here to start this one here, and continue on, and that's what this line right here is, letting me know I can sew on the next strip then after that one. So it's a little bit more math, mine's a little bit more complicated. My suggestion to you would be to get a basic design for your first one, play around with your numbers, play around with how it works, and then you can start design. Now, let's say if you don't want to design your own, if you want to look at an existing pattern. So the existing patterns will use letters and numbers corresponding to what you have here. Make your cheat sheet. Your cheat sheet will be invaluable for reading what you're doing and how you're doing it. And that is how you can make all those amazing, complicated Bargellos. A lot of times, all they're doing is taking it apart at one area and then re-sewing it together in order to make all the different designs on there. So as long as you're taking it apart and putting it together, again, you can do as whatever you want with your designs. But for the rest of this tutorial, I'm just going to show you some basic stuff with this. And let's play with my design wall, and I can show you the way that this lays out compared to what you see here. So I have been laying all of my strips. Like I said, I cut everything out. I used the design numbers. These numbers that are right here at the tops, these are the ones that, oh, sorry, I was just looking to make sure this was hanging up correctly. These squares at the very top, these are the numbers. So in my numbered thing, I have number 1, number 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. And it's going to keep on going down according to the numbers that I have at the top for my strips. Now, if you're doing a super complicated one, I would actually have a design wall with you while you're doing your Bargello. And as you finish that super complicated strip and you know everything is good, hang it up and move to the next one. If you do not have a design wall, or if you're interested in making your own of how to do it, I do have a tutorial on how to make your own design wall, or where you can buy them. I'll make sure I put that link down below here of where you can buy them as well, in case you just don't want to go look at that design wall video, but you're interested in it. And you're like, oh wait, no, I know what design walls are. I definitely want one. It is just a cool thing. All right, so once I have all of my strips done, now comes the next step, because if you remember, we ironed all of our strips the same direction. So as you like my movement because of the different colors, I was playing with all the different things. That looks really cool. I didn't even notice that I did that. How it goes light to dark to light again. So it's really almost a cascading for all sorts of things. I just got really excited and dropped it down. All right, so every single one of my strips, remember, I ironed everything up. So all of my strips are ironed up. So how am I going to nest these seams? They're all going in the same direction. Well, I'm going to re-iron them. So this one right here is my strip number 1. I'm going to take my strip number 2 down, and I'm going to iron my seams in the opposite direction, and then hang it back up again. And I'm going to keep on skipping and then ironing them in opposite directions until everything comes together. It really is as easy as that. It really is that easy. So I'm going to go ahead and get to ironing, and then I'm going to get to sewing them together. Remember, nesting seams. If you're not sure about nesting seams, take a look at the video down below. And it'll all just come together. Now I see it in the actual video. I'm like, wait, it's like blocked with a different color. I'm kind of curious how this is going to look and what it's going to turn out. Like, this is really different. Like, I may change some things. I don't know. I got to look at this. So I'll come back with my finished quilt and we'll see what it looks like together. I'm excited. And with the magic of video, it's done. Now, you may notice that there is a block of color over here that's kind of different, and that there are blocks of colors down there that are different. Now, I noticed this when I was putting everything up on my design wall. Remember I said that I may change some things because it looked different? I did. I completely changed around some things. I undid some stuff. I re-sewed some things together. And I have a bit different of a quilt that I had when I first started. Now, it's still not right, though, because I use the variegated fabrics. So it goes from the one color to the next color. And I didn't take that into account whenever I was designing my Bargello. So I have learned something new today, but I'm still going to finish this. I'm not going to completely take this apart and completely redo it. I'm going to finish this. I'm going to pretend like I did it on purpose, and I'm going to have a reason behind it, and I don't know what that reason right now is, but that's what you do whenever you quilt, right? You fix it or you leave it, and you accept it, and you act like you meant that all along. But yeah, so Bargello quilts, they are amazing and easy and awesome. And if you have variegated fabric, be careful with that. Okay, so let's talk some patterns. So I talked about, now you know the technique, now let's take a look at some patterns. Once you have the technique and you understand what goes into making Bargellos in your toolbox, then you can start looking at some of the really cool patterns. Link down below, I have a few of my recommended easy starter patterns. So if this is your first step into Bargellos, take a look at those first. Do one or two of those, and then you can start getting into some of these. So these are some of my favorite books that I love for Bargellos. You've got the Twist and Turn Bargello quilts and more twist and turns. Look at some of those designs. They're really amazing. These books are pretty easy to read. They have charts in here for all of your numbers. The Twist and Turns actually have the numbers in there for the actual patterns. So it follows along with exactly what we were talking about. Now, they do talk about different sizes of strips that you need to cut and what you need to do within those strips. Because remember, we talked about how you cut those strips depends upon how wide or thin your rows are. And then we also have the Annie's Bargello Quilts and Beyond. Now, I'm going to put links to all these down below. This is another one. It's super easy, super nice. It's really easy to read. The only thing that you're going to have to add to this one is they have letters instead of numbers, and they don't necessarily they only have the starting one. They don't necessarily put all the numbers in there. So you may just want to write in there all of your numbers. But my absolute favorite intermediate book of Bargello quilting is the Bargello Quilts in Motion. This book is so easy to understand. It is so easy to read. It's by Ruth Ann Berry. I've got the link down below. It is just, let me just pick a random, look at that. And they have different colors ways. So they have all the different colors with all of the numbers of these, what they're calling them. And then after that, the pinup charts are even better. They're colored. The pinup charts are colored, so there's no mistakes of where everything is going, and they're numbered. So if you want a really good intermediate book that's a step up from the beginners, I recommend this one, and then you can start taking a look at all of the others. Once you get hooked on Bargellos, you may never do another type of quilt again. They are so much to make. It's so much fun to make. So yeah, show me your Bargello quilts. I have a Facebook group now called Quite Nerdy Quilters. The link is down below if you would like to join. It is a fellowship of nerdy quilters. So take a look at it. Show me your Bargellos. Show me the Bargellos you make. I want to see them. You can also ask questions in the group, get some help, whatever you need. And yeah, hopefully you learn how to make Bargello quilts today. Don't forget to like my Facebook. Oh, follow my YouTube, like this video, follow my Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and don't forget about Twitch, where I sew live and you can interact with me.